All right, let's take a look now at the reigns of David and Solomon. Now, David's story in the book of Chronicles is told in 1 Chronicles 10 through 29 and Solomon in 2 Chronicles 1 to 9. David's story is told in two parts. The kingdom of David in 10 to 20 and then his temple prep in 21 to 29. Now remember, what is our key when reading the book of Chronicles? We're in a conversation with our chronicler. All right, buddy, what did you add? What did you remove? And what did you change from your source material? The chronicler is going to remove from the picture of David all of the negative stories. So David and Bathsheba. We're going to take that, rip that out of there. Go away. We don't need that. Neither do we need any of the 14 chapters where David is on the run from Saul, kind of portrays him as being weak or vulnerable. No, we don't need that. Or the 8 chapters of the conflict in 2 Kings between David's children with Amnon is going to rape his sister Tamar, then Absalom's going to come in and kill his brother, and he's going to go into exile, come back, usurp the throne. All those 8 chapters gone. We don't want those in our book of Chronicles. Why? Mr. Chronicler, let's ask him, why did you remove all of the negative pictures of David? Are you simply trying to, hide all of the skeletons in David's closet? Well, no, of course not. The chronicler knows if you want to read those stories, you can. They're right here in Samuel and Kings. Go right ahead. That's what he did to prepare his material. No, the chronicler is doing something different. The chronicler is using the historical David, and he is presenting him as a literary ideal which then becomes a type or a portrait, a picture. This is kind of my picture frame here. This idealized David becomes a portrait of the future Messiah. And that's one of the massive purposes of the book of Chronicles, is to present this literary ideal of David. And the prophets are going to do the same thing. I mean, you think about Ezekiel 34, which describes, or Yahweh's going to say, I will set my shepherd David over them, and he will rule over them forever. Is he talking about the literal David there in Ezekiel 34, like 500 years after David's death? No, he's not. He's talking about an idealized David who is a picture then of the Messiah. And what the prophets of Ezekiel and Jeremiah do through prophecy, so the chronicler is going to do through narrative. And that's why David is presented as an idealized form. Now let's take a closer look then at one aspect of this idealized portrait of David. So in the book of Samuel, David's ascent to the throne takes place in 2 stages. On the first stage, he's anointed and becomes king at Hebron, and he rules there for 7 years. And then only after that does he become a king over all Israel. But not so in the book of Chronicles. Chronicles wants to present David as king over all Israel from the very beginning. Let's take a look at that in 1 Chronicles 11. All right, David is anointed king here in 1 Chronicles 11. It says that all Israel, this is a key phrase for the chronicler. He loves these words. All Israel gathered together to David at Hebron to make him king. All the elders of Israel came to make him king. Then all of Israel went with David to Jerusalem. Now let's jump down a little bit, a couple chapters. Chapter 12, where it says that all these men of war came to Hebron to make David king over all Israel. Likewise, all the rest of Israel came with a single mind to make him king. Now look when it says all of these men of war. Who is it talking about? We'll scroll up a little bit. These men of war were men from Judah, Simeon, Levi, Benjamin, Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Dan. All of the tribes of Israel joined together to make David king. Now, let's just scroll down a little bit. Look at all these things in blue. All Israel, all Israel, all Israel, all Israel. all Israel assembled at Jerusalem. So this is a clear portrait of David as king over all Israel. And that's what the chronicler is interested in presenting David as. I mean, go back to the genealogy. That's what he hinted at here with this section, with all tribes being represented. Secondly, he added this aspect, but then he's also going to add all of these chapters, 21 to 29, 9 chapters not present in Samuel of David's temple prep. So we know that Solomon was the one who built the temple, but Chronicles is going to present David as the real temple builder. And it's going to organize this material in kind of a fun, chiastic pattern, where it's going to start. David's going to collect some materials for building the temple, the gold, the silver, the bronze, and the materials are going to be here at the end. And then he's going to give 2 speeches, a speech to Solomon and to all the leaders of Israel. And then the same thing again, a speech to Solomon and all the leaders of Israel. Interestingly, in this speech in chapter 28, it says that David received the plan for the tabernacle. Let me scribble on this. David received the plan for the temple, from the hand of God, as if it was written by God himself. And this word for plan, tavnit, it's the same word for the plan that Moses received for the tabernacle on Mount Sinai. So David is presented as a temple builder, just like Moses was a tabernacle builder. He's a new Moses. He's a picture of the Messiah. And then at the center of this section, 5 chapters devoted to David's organization of the Levites, the priests, the musicians, the officers, the gatekeepers, the treasurers. 5 chapters devoted to the Levites. Look here in the center of the genealogy. Focus on the Levites. King, priest, king, priest. So why do we have all of this new material, Mr. Chronicler? Why did you add that? Because he wants to present the ideal David as the temple builder. So let's give David a hammer, because you build things with hammers. There you go. So the ideal David is a temple builder. And the Messiah, the future Messiah, he's going to build the new temple. Now let's move on and discuss Solomon for a minute. And just like David, we're going to remove some of the negative stories of Solomon. So in 1 Kings 11, it describes all of Solomon's foreign wives. But that is not going to be present in the book of Chronicles. We're just going to take that material off. And then also we're going to devote a huge section of this portrayal to Solomon's temple building. So chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all about Solomon building the temple. And in chapter 3, it gives us this unique little detail, again, added to the account in Kings, which is not present there, about where Solomon built it. See this little green mountain? It is built in, it says in 2 Chronicles 3:1, on Mount Moriah. And this is significant because Mount Moriah, the only other place in the Bible where this is mentioned, is Genesis 22, where Abraham was going to sacrifice his son Isaac, but God provided a substitute. So just like the aspect of Genesis, which presented substitutionary sacrifice, is plugged in a big way by the chronicler here in this section of Solomon. So the chronicler does want to present Solomon as a literary ideal, kind of like David. However, he's going to give us an important clue that Solomon is not the son of David that we're waiting for. And he's going to do it in the Davidic covenant in 1 Chronicles 17. The Davidic covenant in 1 Chronicles 17. And he's going to make some super important changes, adaptations to the covenant as is found in 2 Samuel 7. And let's take a look at some of those changes. This is really, really cool. The chronicler was a genius. So here I have a table which has just a couple of verses from the Davidic covenant in 2 Samuel 7, and then as it's presented by the chronicler in 1 Chronicles 17. And I've highlighted some of the differences. So you'll note here that the chronicler is going to add a little phrase at the beginning of verse 11. Now it says, in the original covenant, when your days are fulfilled, you lie down with your fathers. The chronicler is going to keep that when your days are fulfilled, but he's going to add this little phrase at the beginning, and it will come about. Now, you may not see that in your translation, but let me prove to you that it's there. So 1 Chronicles 17:1. Let's go down to verse 11. Here we are, when your days are fulfilled. But look how this verse begins. I'm going to open up the Hebrew here. See this? When your days are fulfilled, there's this little phrase which they don't translate. Why don't they translate it? It says here to happen or to come about. It says chaya. This little word is not in 2 Samuel 7, but it is in 1 Chronicles 17. And this phrase is all over the prophets, and it's used to refer to something that is in the eschatological future. So it's found in Isaiah 2 and really all over the place. So what he's doing, what this brilliant little chronicler is doing with his pen, adding a little word here, is to extend the promise in the Davidic covenant out into the future. Let's keep reading. I will raise up your offspring after you. Now, this word offspring is important. It's zerah. It means seed. So think Genesis 3:15. And what it says in the original is, who shall come from your body. Now, look how the chronicler adapts that. I will raise up your seed after you from your own sons. From your body, it's changed to from your sons. And what's the effect of this little change? Well, it's going to shift the hope for this promised seed from the historical Davidic kings that we find in 1st and 2nd Kings to someone who will come from them in the future. I think a little diagram is pertinent here. So need lots of colors to make this work. Here's our Davidic covenant. And in 2 Samuel 7, it says, I will raise up a seed from your own body. But the chronicler is going to say, no, I'm going to raise up a seed from your sons. So it's going to come from your sons, and his kingdom is going to rule and reign forever. Let's give this guy a crown. So do you see what the effect of this change is? Okay. All right, let's regroup. This is 2 Samuel 7. This is 1 Chronicles 17. Who will be the promised seed of Genesis 3:15? Will it be someone from David's own body and among the kings of Judah? No, we know that's not the case. It will come from them later in the future. And that's kind of what this post-exilic little hint is there at the end of the genealogies. The promised son of David is going to come from them, one of the sons of David. Let's go back to our chart. All right, I required a lot of pens to make this work. Put all my caps on before I draw on my hands. Okay, let's move down a little bit here. Next section. These verses are the same. I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. That's maintained, but look, the chronicler is going to remove the second half of verse 14. When he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men and the stripes of the sons of men. Now, the chronicler knows that this promise, the covenant, it's referring to the Messiah, and the coming Messiah, the suffering servant of Isaiah, which the chronicler probably has open as he's writing his work as well, he will do no wrong. So we don't need that little verse in there. Let's move here to the end. And your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. The chronicler is going to change a pronoun in there, and he's going to say, his throne shall be established forever. Now, why is that change made? Because the chronicler knows that David's throne did not continue forever. In 2 Chronicles 36, Babylon comes in, wipes out Jerusalem, and there's no Davidic king on the throne. David's throne did not last forever, but the Messiah's throne will last forever. So what he's doing with all of these changes, the chronicler, he is extending this promise out into the future. Because he knows that the Davidic seed will come from the son of David, is not going to be among the sons of David, but among their sons. And that is the chronicler's hope, which he's presenting to his post-exilic audience.